Good morning, students. Welcome back all to another episode of Appreciating Prose. So in the last class we have been dealing with very peripheral aspects of essays and its types and all that. Formal essays, informal essays, formal essays impersonal, informal essays personal. These informal essays divide into two, periodical essay and critical essay. And we had seen the major figures regarding these two. The personal essays, in which we had seen biographies, autobiographies, memoirs and diaries. Yes. So in this class we can look at certain major essays and their prominent style or feature or any masterpieces, and then we can begin Charles Lamb today. Okay. Speaking about essays, the name which I have to utter first, it should be none other than Michael de Montaigne. Montaigne, who belonged to or who has written during the time of French Renaissance, or we can call Montaigne as well as Bacon as Renaissance writers. Montaigne belonged to French Renaissance, and during 1533 he was a person who had exhibited his ideas and values and dignity he had perceived, and he addressed or he expressed it through his essays. So he first published his point of view in a work titled Essay, and it has got 2 volumes. It was published in 1580. He was a skeptical observer. Montaigne was a skeptical observer, and he observed the habits, the interactions of everybody around him. And his observations made him to portray human beings as weak and know very little, or a very little known mankind. Another noted figure in the family of essays, we can see Sir William Cornwallis, who wrote in 1603 and 1617. He was greatly influenced by Montaigne than Bacon. അപ്പോൾ ബേക്കനേക്കാൾ അധികം മൊണ്ടൈൻ്റെ റൈറ്റിങ്സിൽ ഇൻഫ്ലുവൻസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള മറ്റൊരു റൈറ്ററാണ് Sir William Cornwallis. And in his writing we can see he followed a kind of meditative tone. His topics were ambition, resolution, youth, humility, etc. So he dealt with all kinds of human matters and concerns. And ഇന്നത്തെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ later ആയിട്ട് പിന്നീട് വന്നിട്ടുള്ള English essays, they modeled on the writings of this William Cornwallis, who was influenced by Montaigne. We can see Robert Burton and his Anatomy of Melancholy, another important noted work or prose work in the next phase. It was in 1621. Robert Burton and his work, The Anatomy of Melancholy. Anatomy of Melancholy is his prominent work or his masterpiece, we could say. Melancholy as the lens through which all the human emotions were scrutinized. മെലൻകളിയിലൂടെയാണ് മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ ബാക്കിയുള്ളതായിട്ടുള്ള എല്ലാത്തരം ഇമോഷൻസിനെയും ഒരു അളവുകോലായിട്ട് വെച്ചിരുന്നത് മെലൻകളിയായിരുന്നു. So it was a kind of medicinal contribution. He contributed his writing to the medicinal field, though it was considered as the greatest advancement in the literature or writing in literature. We have Sir Thomas Browne. He was an English polymath. A polymath means one who is learned much, too much of learning, scholar. So he has written, as we mentioned, he was a polymath. He has got a vast learning over the different areas in which he was interested in, medicine, religion and so on. He was influenced by the Baconian inquiry into the scientific innovation and revolutions. much progressive thoughts to know more about what is happening around him. Sir Thomas Browne. നമ്മൾ പഴയ കാലത്തിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു 17th or 18th centuryക്ക് ശേഷമാണ് we could see from the age of enlightenment, Edison, Steele, Dryden, Pope and all that. Those prominent figures we could see in the later period or in the 17th and 18th century. അതിന് മുമ്പുണ്ടായിരുന്ന കാലഘട്ടങ്ങളിലെ കുറച്ച് പ്രൊമിനൻ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള എസ്സേയിസ്റ്റുകളുടെ പേരാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ പറഞ്ഞത്. We had seen the prominent writers of the 16th and 15th centuries, beginning from Montaigne, moving on to Bacon, then to Sir William Cornwallis, Robert Burton and Sir Thomas Browne. After these series of Renaissance writers and followers, we can see in the age of enlightenment, in the age of reason, the three major or three prominent writers of the time, Richard Steele, Joseph Edison and Dr. Samuel Johnson. Richard Steele and Joseph Edison we mentioned while discussing about periodical essays, their writings. The Tatler and the Spectator. Tatler began its journey in the year 1709 by Steele. And Johnson, Samuel Johnson, who was very prominent during 1750s with similar publications, praises and arguments and criticisms regarding various writings and writers, poets, dramatists, Milton, Shakespeare, everyone was there in his writings. Moving on to the 17th and 19th century, we can see Edmund Burke and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The Romanticism, yes, 19th century. And they wrote essays for the general public, the concerns and the thoughts, the personal expressions, tastes. In the 20th century or in the later 19th century, we can see another group of writers or essays, William Hazlitt, Charles Lamb, Leigh Hunt and Thomas Dickens as major writers of the period, essays of the period. We can see T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf and all that in the 20th century who discussed or who criticized art and the different other cultures of the period. Considering William Hazlitt, he was a great dramatist, essayist and a literary critic and painter, a social commentator and a philosopher too. Considering Charles Lamb, he is the one whom we are dealing with dealing in the coming classes and all that, Charles Lamb. His essays were all personal. He expressed his personal emotions, his fantasies, his imaginations, his pathos, his worries and everything through his writings, through his essays. Not only through his essays but also through his poems and other writings. Especially he is noted for his essays. We have Leigh Hunt, who created a Hunt circle in which he has got friends like Lamb and Hazlitt and all that in that group, which was an intellectual or which portrayed the intellectual writings or journeyings and all those kinds of radical principles in his time. So all these are the later essays or major essays we could see in the 16th and 17th until the 20th century. Among these writers we have a very lovable or called as the most lovable of English literature, that prominent figure Charles Lamb for our study. His Dream Children, a Reverie is the essay we have to go through. Before going through the essay, let's look at the person at first. Charles Lamb. He was born in London as the son of Elizabeth Field and John Lamb. He has got a sister, an older sister, and 11 years older than him, and has got an older brother, John. And he had lost some of his siblings. They couldn't survive the infancy. അധികം ചെറുതായിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ തന്നെ കുഞ്ഞിലെ തന്നെ മരിച്ചുപോയ മറ്റ് സഹോദരങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത്. ഒരു സഹോദരനും ഒരു സഹോദരിയും, മേരി ലാംബ് ആൻഡ് ജോൺ ലാംബ്. And he was, his father was assisting a lawyer in the inner temple, and he had taken that job for a long time. His mother, his life was a kind of a tragic one. Considering or taking Lamb's life into account, we can see his family has got a hereditary mental or a kind of hunted by mental restraints. We have a very prominent or noted personality to learn for this semester, that is Charles Lamb. Among these essays, we have a personal essays called as Charles Lamb. His Dream Children and Reverie is the essay you have to learn. So let's look at his life at first. Charles Lamb was born on February 10, 1775 and died on December 27th, 1834. He was born in London, and his mother Elizabeth Field and father John Lamb, who was a bencher at the Inner Temple. He was assisting a lawyer. നമ്മുടെ ഭാഷയിൽ പറഞ്ഞ ഗുമസ്തൻ. And the person, the boy Charles Lamb, he was educated at Christ Hospital, where he had another companion, that is none other than Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who was studying there itself. So he had been with all these persons, especially speaking about Christ Hospital. It was not a person to survive easily. The atmosphere and it was a boarding school, typical boarding school, and to survive there was rather difficult for all other younger boys. But he had gone through all these hardships and troubles and struggles there, because he had to face many more struggles and hardships in his own life. His life was a tragic one, Charles Lamb, but he was the most lovable person in literature. ഒരുപാട് ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുകളും വിഷമങ്ങളും ജീവിതത്തിൽ അനുഭവിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളൊരു വ്യക്തിയായിരുന്നു. ബട്ട് ഹി വാസ് വെരി കാം ആൻഡ് കമ്പോസ്ഡ് പേഴ്സണാലിറ്റി. എന്താണ് പ്രശ്നമെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ, ഹിസ് ഫാമിലി ഹാസ് ഗോട്ട് എ സ്ട്രെയിൻ ഓഫ് മാഡ്നെസ്. അച്ഛന് ചെറുതായിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു ഒരു പ്രശ്നം. Charles Lamb himself had been admitted to a mental asylum. But the major concern was his sister Mary Lamb, 11 years older sister Mary Lamb, and he has a brother too, John Lamb. John Lamb അച്ഛൻ്റെ പേരാണ്, ബ്രദറിൻ്റെ പേരും ജോൺ ലാംബ് തന്നെയാണ്. In older times, one of the sons or daughters will take the names of ancestors, especially their parents. So John Lamb was older than him, and he lost all the other siblings. They couldn't survive the infancy. അപ്പോൾ വേറെ 3-4 സഹോദരങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, പക്ഷെ അവർക്കൊന്നും ആ ഒരു ചെറുപ്പത്തിൽ തന്നെ മരിച്ചുപോയി. So he has got a sister Mary Lamb and brother. And considering Mary Lamb, on September 1796 she murdered her mother, that means Lamb's mother Elizabeth Field. ഒരു പ്രത്യേക ഒരു ഫ്രണ്ട്സീഡ് മൂഡിൽ അമ്മയെ, സ്വന്തം അമ്മയെ she murdered, she killed. And even though he has to face such a tragedy in his life, he was very willful to take care of his sister, and he was the one who survived the life along with his sister, who take care of her, who had taken all those medicines and treatments required for her. Okay, coming back to his life, he couldn't do much in his presentation field or in his other fields, because he has got a problem with he was suffering from stuttering. ചെറുതായിട്ടൊരു വിക്കിൻ്റെ പോലത്തെ ചെറിയൊരു പ്രശ്നം അദ്ദേഹത്തിനുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. So he obtained a clerical job in a South Sea house in 1792, where he worked for a long period of time till he was retired, and he earned a pension too. So he devoted his life to his sister, and the sister appeared frequently in his essays. As we mentioned, his essays were all personal. Lamb's essays were all personal, which expressed, or we can say autobiographical. A lot of autobiographical elements we can see in his essays. His uncles, his aunts, his grandmother, his father, his sister especially appeared in his essays. And his sister appeared as cousin Bridget. Lamb wrote his essays under the pen name Elia. We can see the essays of Elia and the last essays of Elia published in 1823 and 1833, in which we can see he used this pseudonym Elia. Elia was the co-worker, an Italian clerk who worked along with Lamb in the South Sea house, where he worked, or where he had undergone a clerical post. We can see he expressed his own personal pathos, emotions and tragedies mixed with a little bit humor, imagination and fantasy while he writes these essays. He was not only an essayist, he wrote many other prominent works in literature, especially that of Tales from Shakespeare, along with his sister Mary Lamb, the co-author of the work. It was published in 1807. He had created a children's version of Odyssey as The Adventures of Ulysses in 1808. So his writings has given him, or has taken all the autobiographical elements of Lamb himself, his aunt, his uncles, his aunt sister, his father, his lover, everyone appeared in his essays as a noted figure repeatedly. Speaking about Lamb's career, we can see that his literary career started as a poet. He had collaborated with Coleridge while writing his poems, and he has written a prose romance called as A Tale of Rosamund Grey in 1798. He attempted a tragedy which was by imitating the Elizabethan tragedy, but it was a bit failure. It was John Woodville in 1802, which has got a style of his favorite Elizabethan playwrights, but it has got no success on the stage. But his Tales from Shakespeare was a grand success, which was written in collaboration with his sister. His critical work, one of his prominent writing was Specimens of English Dramatic Poets who lived about the time of Shakespeare in 1808. Specimens of English Dramatic Poets who lived about the time of Shakespeare 1808. എലിസബത്തൻ കാലഘട്ടത്തിൽ എഴുതിയിരുന്ന മറ്റ് എഴുത്തുകാരെ കുറിച്ചുള്ളൊരു പഠനം. So it helped these other writers who went into oblivion, മറവിയിലേക്ക്, ആൾക്കാരുടെ ചിന്തകളിൽ നിന്നും ഒരു സ്മൃതികളിൽ നിന്നൊക്കെ മാഞ്ഞു പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരുന്ന കുറച്ച് എഴുത്തുകാരെ രംഗത്തേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരാനും അവരുടെ റൈറ്റിംഗ് സ്റ്റൈൽസും അവരുടെ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻസും എക്സിബിറ്റ് ചെയ്യാനൊക്കെ ആയിട്ട് ലാംബിനി വർക്കിലൂടെ, ഈ സ്പെസിമെൻസ് ഓഫ് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് ഡ്രമാറ്റിക് പോയറ്റ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന വർക്കിലൂടെ സാധിച്ചു എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും ഇറ്റ് വാസ് എ ഗ്രേറ്റർ കോൺട്രിബ്യൂഷൻ ടു ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ. ആൻഡ് it is remarkable for its delicate insight and good literary taste. His writings has got a goodwill. It has got a literary taste in it, very artistically written, though it was not difficult for a simple layman to read. And And considering all these writings, we can see the first essays, or as a prominent work which we mentioned earlier, the essays of Elia, and the last essays of Elia was published in the London magazine in 1820. So the first of his essays appeared in the London magazine 1820 when he was 45 years old. And all these essays were signed as Elia, his pen name or his pseudonym, the clerk in the old South Sea house. As a book, the essays of Elia and the last essays of Elia was published in 1823 and the later in 1833. So his essays are unequaled in English, with the writing style and the approach the writer has got to it, the subject, the topics which he has chosen. It ranges from chimney sweepers to old China. അപ്പോൾ എടുക്കുന്ന വിഷയങ്ങളും അത് അവതരിപ്പിക്കുന്ന വളരെ സിമ്പിളായിട്ടുള്ള സറ്ററിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു കുറച്ച് നർമ്മം കലർന്നിട്ടുള്ള രീതിയിലുള്ള അവതരണവും അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ എസ്സേസിനെ മറ്റ് എസ്സേകളിൽ നിന്ന് മാറ്റി നിർത്തിപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഇറ്റ് വാസ് എ യുണീക്ക് വൺ. They are touched with personal opinions and recollections so oddly obtruded that interest in the subject is nearly swamped by the reader's delight in the author. While speaking about Robert Prose, we could say that his poems begins in delight and ends in wisdom. So Lamb was able to create a delight among the readers through his personal style of writing, through his autobiographical style of writing. And he was very egotistic in writing. He wrote, or he lived in a period of romanticism. So his essays contains romantic aspects through. He wrote in a personal style, where he is, what are his imaginations, what are his fantasies, what are his fancies. While writing a personal essay or a person who is expressing his personal experience, what all things one would express in a personal writing? Definitely his own thoughts, his own emotions, his own dreams, his own ambitions, his own reminiscence. അല്ലേ, ഓർമ്മകൾ ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും, ചിന്തകൾ ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും, സ്വപ്നങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും, ഫാൻറ്റസീസ് ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും, ഫാൻസീസ് ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും. എവറിത്തിങ് വിൽ ബി ദർ in a personal writing. Just like that, in Lamb's writing too, we can see all these elements. The first and foremost thing to discuss is that he wrote in a very simple language. As we mentioned earlier, any layman or any ordinary man can easily understand his language style or his writings. He dealt with the temperament and consciousness of man. He tries to mystify the reader. He tries to readers to find a connection with life and literature. And always he wrote his personal experiences. As we mentioned, his beloveds, his siblings and everyone came in his writings as different characters. So he personalized his own life through his writings or through his essays. He was a follower, or he was influenced by Robert Burton, his Anatomy of Melancholy, as we mentioned earlier, and Sir Thomas Browne, his Religio Medici. He was mainly influenced by these two works, but Mondague had made a greater impression in his life. And considering Lamb, we can see that he likes to read Greek art and literature. So he had got a tint of those elements and aspects in his writings. Although his love for literature and art came from these, as we mentioned earlier, he was an antiquarian who loved to follow, to study historical artifacts, art, literature and history. So he liked to read Greek art and literature, like to follow it. And And considering his writing style, we can see that he wrote in an old-fashioned form. His writing was very gentle but old-fashioned, and old writers were fond of his writings. He used Latin words in his writings with a lot of parentheses and questions and all that. He imitated, while considering his style, we can say that he imitated Elizabethan writers in his writings. He followed them, he was influenced by them. We have his essay, Dream Children, a Reverie, to learn for this semester. A reverie means a kind of lost in thoughts, a daydream, we could say. He dreams of two children in which he is sharing. Children are fond of hearing, listening to stories. So the person, Elia, he is recalling or is reminiscence about the grandmother, Mrs. Field, after her death. He is retelling the stories to the children about his own past. So the person Lamb, as a writer, he is personalizing his own life, his experiences in a different manner, in a fantasy mood, in a dreamlike experience through this writing. And considering this essay, it is about the title itself, it is Dream Children. പേര് സൂചിപ്പിക്കുന്ന പോലെ തന്നെ ചിൽഡ്രനും സ്വപ്നം മാത്രമാണ്, because Charles Lamb was a chronic bachelor, we could say. He wished to have a family life, but he couldn't. So that thought or that dream of having a family of his own had created all those fancy or fantasy mood in this writing too, in which we could see this essay hasn't got any breaks, hasn't got any paragraph division or nothing like that, because the reader too feels that this essay is a dream, essay is a reverie. ഒരു സ്വപ്നം കാണുന്ന പോലെ തന്നെയുള്ള ഒരു അനുഭവം വായനക്കാരനും ഉണ്ടാകണം എന്നുള്ളൊരു താല്പര്യത്തോടു കൂടെ തന്നെ ആ ഒരു സ്റ്റൈലിലാണ് അദ്ദേഹം ഈ ഒരു എസ്സേ എഴുതിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. So we can deal with the essay in the next class, Dream Children, a Reverie. So analyzing Charles Lamb's life in a brief manner, we could say that he was an excellent writer, and he was mentioned or called as a most lovable figure of English literature. He had been through a lot of atrocities in his life. അത്ര സുഖകരമല്ലാത്ത ഒരു ട്രാജിക് ലൈഫാണെങ്കിൽ പോലും അതിൻ്റേതായിട്ടുള്ള വൈഷമ്യങ്ങളൊന്നും അധികം പ്രകടമാകാതെ തൻ്റെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ നടന്നിട്ടുള്ള ഓരോ പൊട്ടും പൊടിയും ഓരോ ക്വിൻറ്റ് എസെൻഷ്യൽസും he had picked it and he had portrayed it through his writings. And we had seen other prominent essays of his time and of the older times and of his later times. That is Bacon, or beginning from Montaigne, Bacon, then Sir William Cornwallis, Robert Burton and Sir Thomas Browne, who had influenced Lamb himself. Again, once again in mentioning Richard Steele and Addison and Samuel Johnson. Then moving on to the Romantic period, we have Coleridge and Charles Lamb, Dickens, Hazlitt and all that in the 19th century, Leigh Hunt. And in the 20th century, we have T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf and other prominent writers of the time till now. So we can see what are the hidden autobiographical elements, what are the wishes or dreams he had, how he had modified his own personal life and experience into another or a fictional way of a fictional kind of storytelling in this particular essay. He had recreated his own life in this particular essay. ജീവിതത്തിൽ നടന്ന പോലെയൊന്നും അല്ലാതെ കുറച്ച് മാറ്റങ്ങളൊക്കെ വരുത്തിക്കൊണ്ടാണ് അദ്ദേഹം ഈ ഒരു എസ്സേയിലൂടെ അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ സ്വന്തം ലൈഫ് നമ്മിലേക്ക് എത്തിക്കുന്നത്. സോ വി ക്യാൻ സീ ഓൾ ദീസ് തിങ്സ് ഇൻ ദ നെക്സ്റ്റ് ക്ലാസ്. ടിൽ ദെൻ ബൈ, ടേക്ക് കെയർ.